Hey everyone, welcome you all. So in the today's video, let us try to explore some more useful features from SelectorsHub. So like how we can handle SVG elements and how we can handle iFrames, inner iFrames. And then finally we will see how we can handle shadow DOM elements using SelectorsHub. So first let us start with SVG elements. So what is SVG? So SVG is nothing but a scalable vector graphics. Sometimes in your web pages you can see a 2D type of graphics, and those type of graphics we cannot directly locate by using dev tools, and SelectorsHub will help us to locate those SVG elements, and we can use those locators in our automation. So let me show you some examples. Let's go to our HRM web page, and I'm logging into this application. Okay, so once you successfully log into application, so here you can see some of the SVG elements, and you can see here there is a search icon, so it seems similar to the icon, right? So admin, PAM, leave, these are all SVG elements. So if you inspect these elements, you can see the SVG tag on your DOM. You can see in HTML you can see SVG. That means this is a SVG element, scalable vector graphic. So SVG is basically a language for describing 2D graphics. Okay, and similarly there are so many elements are there in this page. Now you can see here this is assign leave, leave list, timesheets, my timesheet, my leave. So these are all SVG elements. So if I look at here my timesheet, you can see there is a SVG tag which is available on HTML. So if I capture the XPath for this particular type of elements from the dev tools, which will provide you incorrect one. So for example, let's see. So I'm inspecting this timesheet. Let me inspect this timesheet. So this is a SVG element. Now when I right click, copy XPath. Now I'm searching for this XPath in the same dev tools. Now it is not locating anything. So this XPath is given by dev tools itself, but it is not locating the SVG element. So this is a problem with the dev tools. So we can't use the XPaths which are generated by dev tools whenever you are identifying the SVG elements. So here our SelectorsHub will help us a lot. So which will automatically generate the locators for SVG elements, and through those locators we can easily locate the SVG elements. So now let's go to the SelectorsHub. Now I'm trying to locate the same element. Now observe this. SelectorsHub clearly says that element is SVG element, right? And for the same element it is also generated relative XPath. So most of the times to locate the SVG elements we use something called name or local name methods. So by using these XPath functions or methods, this is automatically generated on relative XPath. So with this XPath we will able to locate the SVG elements easily. Right, so through dev tools we cannot locate the SVG elements. Even though the dev tools is provided XPath for SVG elements, those XPath will not work, they are incorrect. So through SelectorsHub we can easily generate XPaths for SVG elements, and we can use that XPath in our automation to find out or to locate that element. So let me show you the practical demonstration. So here I have already created a script for that, testing SVG element. This is a Selenium Java code. Now I just log in into my application. Now here this is a XPath which is taken from the dev tools. So this is the XPath which is taken from the dev tools for the same SVG element, that is my timesheets. Now let me execute this code and see how it is going to execute and what is an error it will throw. Let me run my script. Now currently I'm using XPath which is generated by dev tools. Now it is started my browser, then it is open my application, and then it is log into my application. Okay, now once you is successfully log in, so it is not able to click on that element, my timesheet. Now if I look at the error, here you can see it is clearly say no such element exception, unable to locate this particular SVG element. So even though we captured the XPath from the dev tools for the SVG elements, we cannot use that XPath for locating SVG elements. So instead we can use XPath which is generated by the selector. So now this is the XPath which is generated by the SelectorHub. Now let me try to use this XPath to locate the element. Now let me minimize it and then let me try to execute the script one more time with the SelectorHub XPath for the SVG element. Now it is open my application. Now it is login. So once successfully log into application, now you can see it is successfully located that element, and now it is successfully click on the my timesheet, which is SVG element. So similarly, we can easily find out the XPath locators for SVG elements using SelectorHub, and we can use those XPath locators in our automation scripts. So which is very helpful feature from SelectorHub whenever you are locating the SVG elements. So dev tools will not give you the correct XPaths, especially for SVG elements. Okay, so this is how SelectorHub will help us to locate the SVG elements. So now let us see how SelectorHub help us to locate the iFrames. So normally what is an iFrame? So iFrame is something which contains some elements, or sometimes iFrame is also having their own internal iFrame. So let me show you how we can handle iFrames, how SelectorHub help us to locate the elements which are there inside the iFrame. So let me open the application. So let me try to open some other application. I'm trying to open automation demo site. Okay, so I'm going to frame section. Now you can see here there is a single iframe, and inside this there is an element. Now there is another iframe here, and which contains a inner iframe and which contains an element. So normally whenever you want to interact with this element, so directly it is not possible because this is present inside the iframe. So if you're trying to locate this element using the dev tools, so dev tools will provide the locator for this. Suppose inspecting this element, or you can directly copy the locator for that. Inspect this element, just copy XPath. Now I copied the XPath of the element which is there inside the frame. Now this is the XPath which is given and which is matching with more than one element. So in this case, if I look at this, only if you depend on only if it depends on the dev tools, so you can inspect this element, but you don't know exactly where exactly this element is present until unless you navigate through the DOM. You can see this is the element. If you just go a little bit up here, you can see some iframe. So by seeing the tag, you will notice exactly that element is present inside the iframe, right? So then what you need to do, first you need to capture this iframe locator, then we need to switch to it. After that you can get this text box element, then we can pass the data into it. So directly it's not possible to locate the element. So first we need to switch to the iframe. For that, first we need to capture the iframe locator, and then we need to switch to it, and then we can capture this element. So that is a process. So normally if I don't use SelectorHub, we need to find out this iframe, and then we need to capture the locator for iframe first, and we need to switch to it, and after that we need to go to the element, and then we need to again get the XPath of the element, then we need to do it. We need to again do the action on this element. So how SelectorHub help us here? So as soon as you locate this element using SelectorHub, go to SelectorHub. Now you can see immediately SelectorHub is giving the option here. You can see inside the iframe. So what exactly it is saying is, as soon as I located this element, as soon as I inspected this element, SelectorHub is captured the XPath of this element, and apart from this, it is also showing extra in which iframe this element is present. So this is the additional option which will display here. So apart from this element locator XPath, apart from this, it will also display the locator or XPath for the frame which exactly contains this element. So this information we cannot directly get in the dev tools. So in the SelectorHub, it will show you the element locator along with this in which frame this element is present. So that also it will clearly show you. So this is one option which is available, and directly first we can switch to this particular frame and then we can get this element, then we can interact with this element. So first we will switch to the frame, and once we switch to the frame, then we can interact with this element directly. So this is an additional option which is provided by the SelectorsHub, which is very useful feature. But sometimes you have inner iframes. If I look at this second one, so this is outer iframe which contains the inner iframe, and again which contains the element. Suppose I want to pass some text in this. So first we need to go to outer iframe, we need to switch to outer iframe, then we need to switch to inner iframe or child iframe, and then we can interact with this element. Okay, so in this case, how SelectorsHub will give the suggestions. Now let us try to inspect this element using SelectorsHub. Very beautiful feature. You can just look at here. As soon as I inspected this element which is there inside the iframe, see, which is giving the XPath of this element. Also it is clearly saying in which frame this XPath, this element is present. So child frame XPath is given. Now if I just go back, if I just go a little bottom to this SelectorsHub, now you will notice it is automatically generated the code for us. See here. So this is the code which is automatically generated. So if I just go back and check this code, you can see here, I'm just copying this code. See here, it is automatically generated the XPath for the first frame, which is iframe, outer iframe, and it is also giving the XPath for the inner iframe, and this is the actual element we are looking for. Okay, so this code is automatically generated by the SelectorsHub. So now we can just copy this particular code, and we can slightly modify this, and we can directly interact with the inner iframe. Okay, so the additional advantage which is provided by SelectorsHub is what? Along with this element, so whichever element we are interacting, which is there inside the frame, right? So along with this element locator, which will also give you the locator for the frame, in which frame that element is provided. Suppose we have some inner frames, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 multiple inner frames, then it will automatically generated the code, or it is automatically given the suggestion here in this particular box. How many frames are there? Frame 1, which contains another frame, frame 2, now which contains the element. So by taking the help of this code, we can easily find out frames, and accordingly we can switch to the particular frames, and then we can interact with the element. So this is how the SelectorsHub will help us to locate the elements which are present inside the iframes. Now let me show you the practical demonstration for this. So you can just look at this code. So this is a iframe which is created again in the Selenium Java code. So if it is a normal single iframe, we can simply do like this. We can just switch to only one iframe. So this is a script which I have written for single iframe. So directly we go to the iframe. So this is the iframe, we switch to the iframe, and this locator is automatically provided by the SelectorsHub. Okay, so if I go back to the SelectorsHub once again, you can see if I go to the single iframe, as soon as you have inspected this element, along with this element relative XPath, which is also giving the locator for the frame, right? So this will help us a lot. So simply we can switch to the particular frame here, and then we can find that element, and then we can pass the value. So like this we can directly get the details from the SelectorsHub. So let me try to execute the script for single iframe. So if I normally go to the dev tools, it will not give you this much of information, just it will locate the element, but we will not know exactly whether that element is present inside the iframe or not until unless you navigate it through XML. So now it is launched my web page. Now it is trying to interact with the element which is present inside the iframe. So now it is successfully entered the value in the iframe. This is single iframe. Now let me look at the inner iframe. So second one. So if I just go to the inner iframe, again it is provided all the information, right? It is just I'm clicking on the button which will open the inner iframe. Then this is the frame 1 element. I'm capturing the frame 1 by using XPath, which is provided by SelectorsHub, and then I switch to the frame 1. So after that, again I capture the frame 2, which is actually inner frame frame 2 is present inside the frame 1. So this is the XPath which is provided by SelectorHub again, and I capture the frame 2, then switch to it. After that, I am trying to interact with the element. So this is how the SelectorHub will help us a lot while locating the elements, especially which are present inside the inner iframe. So as soon as you locate this element, what will happen? It will, because we have multiple nested iframes, so it is automatically generated the information. So you have two iframes, frame 1 and frame. If you have any more iframes, it will automatically generate XPaths for all the iframes and along with the element you are looking for. So this will help us a lot. So once you capture, and I have written the code for this, let me try to execute. So now we can see it is trying to get the inner iframe. It is still loading the page. Now it is go to inner iframe. Now we can see it is exactly provided the value in the input box. Okay, so this is how the SelectorHub will help us while locating the elements which are present in the frames or inner iframes. Very, very helpful. So if I use DevTools, we cannot find multiple iframes. We need to navigate through HTML. Then we need to count how many iframe tags are there. So accordingly, we need to write our own XPath. A lot of things are involved. And SelectorHub will automatically give you everything. If you have multiple frames also, SelectorHub will give you automatically all the XPaths for all the frames along with the element. So this is how we can also use SelectorHub while locating the elements which are present inside the iframes. Now the third thing is SelectorHub also will help us to locate the shadow DOM elements, which are very, very important. So shadow DOM elements are very difficult to locate by using DevTools. Even though DevTools, if I use DevTools, it will not provide the right locators. And shadow DOM elements we cannot locate by using XPaths. So only the CSS selector we have to use to locate the shadow DOM elements. So now I'll show you how SelectorHub will help us to locate the shadow DOM elements which are present in the web page. If you do not have a SelectorHub, it is very, very difficult task to locate the elements, shadow DOM elements, and script will be very complicated. So now we can see how SelectorHub will help us to locate the shadow DOM elements in our web page. So first of all, let me show you some example. Let me take some application and then I'll show you some example. So how shadow DOM will help us. Let me close this. So this is a web page, right? Let me just close this. Okay. So now let us look at the how SelectorHub will help us at the time of handling the shadow DOM elements. So let me take one website here. Okay, so in this there is an input box, and if you try to inspect this element, right, in the DevTools it is clearly saying it is an input element. So where is it? This element is present under shadow root. Again above this there is another shadow root, and above this another shadow root. There are multiple levels are there, right? This is all shadow DOM actually. So to locate this element, suppose this is the element. If I capture the XPath from the DevTools, copy XPath from the DevTools. So when you try to search in the DevTools, this is the just tag which is given. This is the input. This is the just locator which is given by the DevTools. So it is not able to locate the element. XPath will not work here. Okay, so let us try CSS, how it is going to work. If I use CSS, let's say ID equal to input. So this also won't work. Oh, because this is the ID, so we need to use hash. So let us say hash. There are so many elements with this, so it is not able to match that element. So DevTools cannot help us to locate the shadow DOM elements. Okay, so now we can see the SelectorHub. Now I'm locating this element. This is the element I'm locating. See here, as soon as I located this element, immediately what shadow DOM is saying, that element is present inside the shadow DOM. Here you can see the element is present inside the shadow DOM. And only CSS selector is got generated. There is no XPath. We cannot use XPath for this shadow DOM elements. But how we can handle this? Through automation script, right? If you have only CSS selector, again we need to write a lot of code for this, right? So here SelectorHub, it automatically generated the code here. You can just look at here. So this is the script which is automatically generated by the SelectorHub to handle the shadow DOM element. Now let me show you here how it is got generated. So this is a script which is automatically generated by the SelectorHub. So few lines of code which is automatically generated. So basically this particular script will get the element from the shadow DOM wherever it is. You may have n number of levels, but still it will able to capture the element here. This is the actual element we need, and that is available in first in the shadow root 1, and above this there is another shadow root 1, and both are present in the shadow host here. So multiple things are involved in this. So even though you don't know exactly what happens here, you can just copy paste that particular code from the SelectorHub and you can use it in your script. So this is another very useful feature which is available in the SelectorHub. If you don't have such type of feature, it is very difficult to write the script for that. Earlier I have already created one video how to handle the shadow DOM elements, how we can locate the shadow DOM elements, so without using SelectorHub. So we need to write a lot of code, so a lot of things are involved in this. But instead of that, we can simply copy this code as it is, and we can slightly modify this and we can interact with this. So let me show you the practical demonstration for this. So if I go back to my Eclipse, I already created testing shadow DOM. So if I don't have a SelectorHub, earlier I have created this much of code. So we have launched my application, then we need to find the root, and by using JavaScript executor we need to get the root shadow, and then header, and then toolbar, then we need to get the input decorator, and finally we'll reach that element and we can pass the data into this. So this is a lot of things are involved. So if I use SelectorHub, it will automatically provided the code. So simply we can copy paste that. So you can just go to testing shadow DOM.java. So this particular script is copied from the SelectorHub. It's very simple, and it's simplified a lot. And just copy the code as it is, and this is the element we are looking for, and then you can just modify this. So in this particular element I just want to pass some data, so testing. So when I execute this code, which will automatically interact with the shadow DOM element. So this is very helpful feature from the SelectorHub whenever you are trying to locate the shadow DOM elements, or whenever trying to work with the shadow DOM elements in your application. So very helpful feature from SelectorHub. Now we can see it is launched my application. Now it is trying to interact with this element. Alright, so this is how we can also handle the shadow DOM element. So this script is automatically created by the shadow DOM itself. So it created by the SelectorHub itself. So SelectorHub will help us to create code for shadow DOM elements. Okay, so let me show you one more application for shadow DOM. Let me close this. So very helpful feature. If I don't have a SelectorHub, it is very difficult to write the script for shadow DOM. So it will help us to create a shadow DOM code for those shadow DOM elements, and we can simply copy paste in your script and you can use it. Okay, so now let me show you some other web page how we can handle the shadow DOM elements. I could see some other web page. Just a second. Yeah. Alright, so now let me show you one more application. So here we have shop.polymerproject.org. So if I look at this page, there are multiple shadow DOM elements are there in the same page. So now I want to click on this shop now. This is the shadow DOM element. So when you're inspecting this element, you can see this is the actual element which is part of shadow root. Again, this is part of another shadow root which is again part of a root, shadow root. Okay, so this is basically shadow DOM element. Now let us try to interact with this element. How SelectorHub help us to interact with this element? Simply go to SelectorHub, Now as soon as you located this element, see it is generated the CSS locator for that element. Along with this, here it is automatically generated the code for this. See here, this is automatically generated the code for this. You can simply copy this code and then you can use it. So this is a script which is generated by the SelectorsHub. See, it is automatically captured whatever the root shadows are there, okay, and everything, and then finally this is the element which we need to interact with. So simply you can simply dot send keys or dot click, you can apply on this element. So this is very simple and very useful feature from the SelectorsHub. So whenever you are working with the SVG elements, or whenever you are trying to iFrames, inner iFrames and shadow DOM elements, it's better to use SelectorsHub option. SelectorsHub will help us a lot in this. Okay, especially SVG elements, iFrames and shadow DOM. So dev tools will not help us. So dev tools will give you incorrect XPath, and we cannot locate those elements by using those XPaths. So SelectorsHub will help us a lot. It will automatically generating the locators also. Okay, so these are some of the useful features from SelectorsHub, handling SVG elements, iFrames and inner iFrames, and then shadow DOM. And there are many more features are there in the SelectorsHub. So you can just go to selectorhub.com website. So you can just go to selectorhub.com and you can see so many videos which are created by Sanjay on different products of SelectorsHub. So you can just go through those videos, and you can also go to SelectorsHub YouTube channel. There Sanjay keep updating the videos, and whatever the new updates are coming in those products, he's keep on updating us. And if you need more details about these products and more in detailed information about this product, you can just go and watch the videos from SelectorsHub YouTube channel, or some of the videos are available in the selectorhub.com webpage. Okay, so that's all for this video guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.